Eleanor thought she knew pain. She thought she understood betrayal. But nothing prepared her for the moment Marcus announced he was leaving her for Vivian
He
Cartwright.
claimed he was in
A
Insha,
woman from
but the
old money.
surveillance puts
A
him here
woman
with
with
her.
connections.
And the bank
A woman
statements
who was
prove it.
also pregnant with his baby. He called Eleanor small, limited, not built for his ambitious future. But here's what Marcus didn't know. Here's what nobody knew. The quiet
The
wife he was
reports
throwing
clearly
away.
indicate our
She
strongest
owned
quarter yet.
60% of the
We will
company he
finalize
ran.
the acquisition
The
by the end of the
billion-dollar
month,
empire he was so
securing our
proud of.
position as market
It belonged to
leaders.
her all along. And Vivian, the sophisticated heiress from the Cartwright shipping dynasty, she didn't exist. Every single thing about her was a lie.
And so we look
Marcus
to the
Whitmore
future,
made the biggest
knowing
mistake of
that
his
our
life,
legacy
and
continues
he was about
with
to
the
find
next
out
generation.
exactly how big. This is a story about betrayal, about secrets, about a woman who lost everything and discovered she had more power than she ever imagined. Stay with me until the end, trust me. You don't want to miss what happens next. The divorce papers landed next to her anniversary gift, 7 months pregnant, and her husband hadn't even waited for dessert. Eleanor Hayes Whitmore stared at the manila envelope. The restaurant's soft jazz continued playing. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across white linen tablecloths. Other couples laughed and clinked wine glasses around them. The waiter had just brought their appetizers. Seared scallops for him, a Caesar salad for her. She had spent 3 hours getting ready for tonight, a navy blue maternity dress that still made her feel beautiful. Pearl earrings that belonged to her grandmother. Her hair swept up the way Marcus always said he loved. And now this. I want a divorce, Eleanor, Marcus said. His voice was calm, practiced, like he had rehearsed this moment in the mirror. I've met someone else, someone who matches my ambitions. The baby kicked, hard, as if protesting on her behalf. Eleanor's hand moved to her swollen belly. She could feel her daughter moving inside her. Restless, agitated, babies sense things. They know when something is wrong. What are you talking about, Eleanor asked. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Marcus, we're having a baby in 2 months. We painted the nursery last weekend. Marcus picked up his fork. He actually picked up his fork and took a bite of scallop, as if he hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of their marriage. Her name is Vivian Cartwright, he said, from the Cartwright shipping dynasty. Old money, real money. She understands what it takes to build an empire. Eleanor felt the room tilt slightly. The jazz music seemed to grow louder, then quieter, then louder again. The Cartwright dynasty, she repeated. The words felt foreign in her mouth. She's everything I've been looking for, Marcus continued. He dabbed his lips with the linen napkin. So civilized, so composed, ambitious, connected. She moves in circles that can actually advance my career. Eleanor looked down at the envelope. The edges were crisp and sharp. She thought about how long he must have been planning this, finding a lawyer, drawing up papers, scheduling this dinner, their anniversary dinner. How long, she asked. How long what? How long have you been seeing her? Marcus hesitated, just for a moment, just long enough for Eleanor to know the answer would be worse than she imagined. 6 months, he said. 6 months, half of her pregnancy, every ultrasound appointment, every baby name discussion, every time he had kissed her goodbye and said he loved her. 6 months of lies layered on top of lies. But she did the math. 3 months pregnant when it started. That meant he was sleeping with another woman when they painted the nursery together. When he felt their baby kick for the first time, when he cried and said it was the happiest moment of his life. The scallops sat untouched on his plate now, getting cold, just like everything else in this marriage. There's something else, Marcus said. He cleared his throat. Vivian is pregnant too, 3 months along. I'm going to be a father again. Again, as if their daughter didn't count. As if the child growing inside Eleanor right now was just a rough draft before the real thing. You're telling me, Eleanor said slowly, that you got another woman pregnant while your wife is 7 months along with your first child. It wasn't planned, Marcus said, but it happened. And Vivian comes from the kind of family that can open doors for me, for us, for my future. Your future, Eleanor repeated, not their future, not even his children's future, just his. The waiter approached their table with a bright smile. How was everything this evening? Perfect, Marcus said without looking up. Just perfect. The waiter retreated. Eleanor stared at her husband. This man she had loved for 5 years. This man she had married believing they would grow old together. This man who was now explaining why she wasn't good enough. Why she had never been good enough. I've arranged for you to receive a fair settlement, Marcus said. He pulled a second document from his jacket pocket. The penthouse stays with me, of course, but I'm willing to provide child support once the baby is born. How generous, Eleanor said. Marcus missed the sarcasm entirely. I thought so. My lawyer said I could fight for less, but I wanted to be fair. We did have some good years together. Some good years, like a job review, like a performance evaluation. Eleanor looked at the gift she had brought him. A vintage watch from 1962, the year Whitmore Industries was founded. She had found it at an estate sale and spent months having it restored. The back was engraved with their wedding date and the words, "Forever yours." Forever. What a joke. She reached up and unclasped her pearl earrings. Her grandmother's earrings, the ones Rose Whitmore had worn on her own wedding day 60 years ago. Eleanor set them carefully on the table beside her untouched salad. Then she removed her wedding ring. The diamond caught the candlelight as she placed it next to the envelope. 3 carats. Marcus had been so proud of that ring. He had talked about it for weeks after the proposal. How much it cost. How it proved his success. Everything with Marcus was about proving something. Eleanor, he said, don't be dramatic. We can discuss this like adults. You're right, she said. We can. She stood up, her pregnant belly pressed against the edge of the table. The baby kicked again, harder this time. Sit down, Marcus hissed. People are looking. Let them look, Eleanor said. She picked up her grandmother's earrings and put them back on. They felt warm against her neck, comforting, like Rose was still with her somehow. Eleanor, I said sit down. But Eleanor was already walking away, past the other tables, past the waiter who called after her, past the hostess who asked if everything was all right. Nothing was all right. Nothing would ever be all right again. She reached her car in the parking garage, a modest Honda Civic that Marcus had always been embarrassed by. He drove a Tesla, top of the line. Company car, he said. One of the perks of being CEO. Eleanor sat in the driver's seat. She didn't start the engine. She didn't turn on the lights. She just sat there in the darkness, hands on the steering wheel, going nowhere. The baby kicked again, softer now, almost apologetic. I know, Eleanor whispered. I know. She sat there for 47 minutes. Engine off, hands on the wheel, going nowhere, just breathing, in, out, out. The baby kicked again, a reminder she wasn't alone in this. Finally, she started the car. The dashboard clock read 9:42. Less than an hour ago, she had been a happily married woman looking forward to her anniversary dinner. Now she was something else entirely. She pulled out of the parking garage and headed toward the city. Not toward the penthouse she had shared with Marcus. She couldn't go back there. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. You left without signing the papers. We need to discuss this like rational people. Rational, as if there was anything rational about a man leaving his pregnant wife for another woman on their anniversary. Eleanor turned off her phone and kept driving. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to get away, from the restaurant, from Marcus, from the life she thought she had. But Marcus Whitmore had made one critical miscalculation. He thought he knew exactly who he had married. He was wrong. Joe Brennan arrived at Eleanor's apartment at 11:30 that night, carrying 2 pints of ice cream, a bottle of sparkling cider, and a file folder that would change everything. I brought reinforcements, Joe said, pushing past Eleanor into the small one-bedroom. Rocky Road for emotional emergencies, mint chip for backup, and this. She held up the file folder. Eleanor had rented this apartment 3 months ago, a secret, a safety net. Something in her gut had told her she might need a place of her own someday. She hadn't told anyone about it, not even Joe, not until tonight. How did you know? Eleanor asked. Honey, listen. Joe set down the ice cream and pulled Eleanor into a hug. I've been your best friend for 15 years. You think I didn't notice something was wrong? The apartment was small but comfortable. Second-hand furniture that Eleanor had picked out herself. A kitchen with actual sunlight. A bedroom just big enough for her and the baby. No penthouse views. No marble countertops. No husband. It felt more like home than the penthouse ever had. He served me divorce papers, Eleanor said, at our anniversary dinner, at the restaurant where he proposed. I know, Joe said. He called his lawyer from the restaurant. The lawyer called his wife. His wife called me. Small world, small legal community. Joe opened the rocky road and handed Eleanor a spoon. But that's not the worst part. Sit down. You need to sit down for this. Eleanor lowered herself onto the couch. Her belly made everything harder these days. Sitting, standing, breathing, existing. Joe opened the file folder. I've been investigating Marcus for 3 months, Joe said. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure, but now that he's shown his hand, you need to know the truth. 3 months? Eleanor felt something cold settle in her chest. You've known something was wrong for 3 months and didn't tell me? I suspected, Joe said. There's a difference. And I'm telling you now. She spread documents across the coffee table. Bank statements, phone records, hotel receipts, photographs. The affair didn't start 6 months ago, Joe said. It started 2 years ago, almost from the beginning of your marriage. 2 years. Eleanor stared at the photographs. Marcus and Vivian at a restaurant. Marcus and Vivian at a hotel. Marcus and Vivian on a beach somewhere tropical. In some of the photos, Vivienne was laughing. In others, she was looking at Marcus with an expression Eleanor recognized. Hunger. Pure, calculating hunger. I'm not crazy, Eleanor said quietly. I knew something was wrong. I asked him 100 times. He made me feel paranoid. You're not crazy, Joe confirmed. You were being gaslit by a professional. The ice cream sat untouched. Eleanor couldn't eat, couldn't think, could barely breathe. 2 years. Their entire marriage had been built on lies. There's more, Joe said. She pulled out another document. Vivian Cartwright isn't who she says she is. What do you mean? The Cartwright shipping dynasty, it doesn't exist. I had my investigators check every registry, every business filing, every family record. There's no Cartwright shipping fortune. There never was. Eleanor looked up. She lied about being rich? Her real name is Vera Kowalski. She's from Newark. No family money, no shipping empire, no trust fund, just a string of wealthy men she's targeted over the past decade. Joe spread out more documents. Newspaper clippings, court records, police reports. 3 previous engagements, Joe said. All to wealthy men, all ended badly. For the men, not for her. She walks away with settlements, gifts, investments. Then she disappears and reinvents herself for the next target. Eleanor processed this information slowly. Marcus had left his pregnant wife for a woman who didn't exist. A character, a performance. She's a con artist, Eleanor said. A very good one, Joe nodded. She did her research on Marcus, knew exactly what buttons to push. Old money, social connections. The perfect bait for a man obsessed with climbing. Eleanor thought about all the times Marcus had talked about the Cartwright family, the dinners he claimed to have had with Vivian's parents, the yacht they supposedly owned, the connections that would open doors. All of it fiction. She laughed, actually laughed, sitting on her second-hand couch, 7 months pregnant, abandoned. She laughed until she cried. Her husband had left her for a rich woman while running the company Eleanor owned. Wait. Joe didn't know about that part. There's something I need to tell you, Eleanor said. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Something I've never told anyone. Joe waited. My grandmother, Eleanor said. Rose Whitmore. Not Marcus's family. The Whitmore family. Joe's eyes widened. Your grandmother was Rose Whitmore. The Rose Whitmore? The woman who founded Whitmore Industries? My mother changed her last name when she got married, Eleanor explained. And I was raised to keep a low profile. Grandmother believed that wealth should be earned, not inherited. She wanted me to make my own way in the world. But you did inherit, Joe said slowly, when she died 5 years ago. Eleanor nodded. 60% of Whitmore Industries. held in a trust, managed by Walter Ashford, her attorney. I've never touched it, never told anyone, not even Marcus. Jo sat back. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Eleanor, she said, Marcus is the CEO of Whitmore Industries. I know. Your husband runs the company you own. I know. And he has no idea. None. The silence stretched between them. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. Outside, a car alarm went off and then stopped. He thinks he married down, Eleanor said. A quiet accountant from a modest family. He never asked about my grandmother. Never wondered how I afforded graduate school debt-free. He saw what he wanted to see. A stepping stone, Jo finished. Exactly. Jo picked up her phone. I'm calling Walter Ashford. Right now. Tonight. It's almost midnight. Trust me, he'll want to hear this. 40 minutes later, Walter Ashford sat in Eleanor's small living room wearing a three-piece suit despite the late hour. His silver hair was perfectly combed. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. He looked exactly like what he was. Old money with old manners. Miss Eleanor, he said, I came as quickly as I could. Mrs. Brennan explained the situation. I'm sorry to disturb you so late, Walter. Nonsense, your grandmother would have wanted me here. He accepted a cup of tea from Jo and set it aside without drinking. I've been monitoring the situation at Whitmore Industries. There are developments you should know about. What kind of developments? Walter opened his own briefcase and produced documents that made Jo's file look modest. Mr. Marcus Whitmore has been making aggressive moves at the company, Walter said, pushing for expansion, taking on significant debt, trying to consolidate power before... He paused. Well, before the divorce, it seems. He's been planning this, Eleanor said. For some time, yes. He's also been trying to identify the majority shareholder. The trust is structured for privacy, but he's hired investigators, offered bribes to board members. He's obsessed with finding out who controls 60% of the company he runs. Eleanor thought about all the times Marcus had complained about the silent investor, the mysterious shareholder who never attended meetings, the ghost in the machine. He had been railing against his own wife. Miss Eleanor, there's something else, Walter said. He cleared his throat. The Cartwright shipping dynasty that Vivian claims to hail from? It doesn't exist. I've had my investigators verify. She's a fraud, a very convincing one. We know, Jo said. I found the same information. Walter nodded. Then you should also know this. I've been in contact with Graham Mitchell, the CFO. He's been concerned about Mr. Whitmore's leadership for some time. He's loyal to the true ownership of the company. Graham knows about me? Eleanor asked. He knows someone holds 60%. He doesn't know it's you, but he's been quietly protecting the company from Mr. Whitmore's worst impulses. Walter leaned forward. Miss Eleanor, you have more allies than you realize. The question is, what do you want to do about it? Eleanor looked at the documents spread across her coffee table. Evidence of her husband's betrayal, evidence of Vivian's fraud, evidence of a conspiracy that had been building for years. Marcus had left his pregnant wife for a con artist, and the con artist was pregnant with his child. The mess was biblical. I want to wait, Eleanor said finally. I want to understand the full scope of what's happening before I reveal anything. Walter nodded approvingly. Your grandmother would say the same thing. Patience is power, she always told me. And Marcus? Let him think he's in control. Let him expose himself further. When the time comes, you'll have everything you need. Eleanor placed her hand on her belly. The baby had finally stopped kicking. Exhausted, maybe, just like her mother. One more thing, she said. Vivian's pregnancy. Is it real? Walter and Jo exchanged glances. We don't know yet, Jo admitted, but given her history... Find out, Eleanor said. Find out everything. The investigation took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of phone calls, document requests, and sleepless nights. 2 weeks of Eleanor pretending everything was fine while her world collapsed around her. She had officially moved into the small apartment. Marcus hadn't contested it. He seemed relieved, actually. One less complication in his carefully ordered life. He texted her occasionally, business communications mostly, questions about the divorce settlement, requests to sign papers. He never asked how she was feeling, never asked about the baby, never mentioned that he had destroyed everything they built together. Eleanor didn't respond. Let him wonder. Joe arrived on a Tuesday evening with takeout Thai food and a stack of folders that would change everything. I have good news and bad news, Joe said, setting containers on the coffee table. Which do you want first? Bad news, Eleanor said. Always bad news first. Joe opened the first folder. Vivian isn't pregnant. She never was. It's the same place she's used before. Fake pregnancy test, forged medical documents, pressure for quick commitment, then a convenient miscarriage after the assets are secured. Eleanor absorbed this information. It should have made her feel better. It didn't. So Marcus destroyed our marriage for a woman who was lying about everything, she said. That's one way to put it. What's the good news? Joe smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile that Eleanor recognized from law school. Graham Mitchell has agreed to meet with you tomorrow. He's been documenting Marcus's activities at the company for months. He has evidence of financial irregularities, unauthorized transactions, and what might constitute breach of fiduciary duty. Marcus has been stealing from the company? Not exactly stealing, more like repositioning assets in ways that benefit him personally while putting the company at risk. Joe pulled out financial statements covered in red circles. He's been funneling contracts to companies owned by friends, taking kickbacks on deals, using company funds for personal expenses. Eleanor studied the documents. Numbers and charts that told a story of greed and corruption. Why didn't Graham report this before? Because Marcus is the CEO. He controls who knows what. Graham was afraid of retaliation. But now that he knows there's a majority shareholder who isn't Marcus, Joe shrugged. He's ready to talk. Eleanor sat back. The baby shifted inside her, pressing against her ribs. 8 months now. Only 4 weeks until her due date. There's something else, Joe said. She hesitated. Something harder. Tell me. Joe opened another folder. This one contained photographs. Dozens of them. Marcus and Vivian over the past 2 years. But these weren't surveillance photos. These were personal, intimate, vacation photos taken on beaches and in hotel rooms. Selfies with champagne glasses. Pictures of them together at events Eleanor thought Marcus had attended alone. I found these on a cloud backup, Joe said quietly. He never deleted them. Maybe he thought he was being careful, but nothing digital ever really disappears. Eleanor looked at the photos. She recognized some of the locations. The beach resort where Marcus said he had a business conference. The European hotel where he claimed to meet clients. The restaurant where he had supposedly closed a major deal. All lies, every single one. He took her to Paris, Eleanor said. Her voice sounded distant, hollow. He said it was a solo trip. Time to clear his head. He bought me a souvenir, a little Eiffel Tower keychain. Eleanor, he brought me back a keychain while he was there with her. The tears came then, not the angry tears of betrayal. These were grief tears, mourning tears. She was mourning the death of something she thought was real. Joe moved to sit beside her, wrapped an arm around her shoulders, said nothing. Sometimes silence is the kindest response. Eleanor cried for 20 minutes. Long, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. The baby kicked and squirmed, agitated by the movement. When the tears finally stopped, Eleanor felt empty, cleaned out, like a storm had passed through and taken everything with it. I need to know, she said. I need to know when it started, exactly when. Joe nodded. The first evidence of contact is from 3 years ago, before you were married. He met her at a networking event in Manhattan. 3 years ago. Eleanor did the math. We were engaged, planning the wedding. Yes. He proposed to me while he was already seeing her. It appears that way. Eleanor closed her eyes. She could see it now. The whole picture finally coming into focus. Marcus had never loved her. He had married her because she seemed safe, manageable, a suitable wife who wouldn't interfere with his ambitions. And all along, he was building something with Vivian, waiting for the right moment to trade up. The pregnancy, Eleanor said. Our pregnancy. Was that part of the plan? We don't know, Joe admitted, but the timing is interesting. Vivian announced her fake pregnancy shortly after you announced your real one, almost like she was competing. Or like Marcus told her, and she decided to raise the stakes. That's possible too. Eleanor thought about the nursery, the robin's egg blue walls, the crib they had assembled together, the mobile with little stars and moons. We picked out names together, she said. Charlotte Rose. For my grandmother. He cried when we decided. I thought he was happy. Maybe he was, in his own way. His own way wasn't enough. The smell of Thai food filled the small apartment. Neither of them had touched it. Eleanor's appetite had disappeared entirely. She did what she always did when overwhelmed. She made lists. At 2 in the morning. On the back of a grocery receipt. Pros, cons. What's real? What's fake? The list got very long, very messy, very human. Real things. Her daughter, her grandmother's legacy, her friends, her strength. Fake things. Her marriage. Her husband's love. Her belief in happy endings. It wasn't much, but it was something to hold on to. The next day, Eleanor met Graham Mitchell at a coffee shop downtown. He was a thin man with worried eyes and a nervous habit of straightening his tie. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, thank you for meeting me. Call me Eleanor, and thank you for coming forward. They sat in a corner booth away from other customers. Graham had brought his own stack of folders. More evidence. More documentation of her husband's betrayal. I've worked at Whitmore Industries for 20 years, Graham said. Started as a junior analyst. Worked my way up. Your grandmother hired me herself back in the early days. You knew my grandmother. Everyone in the company knew Rose Whitmore. Graham smiled softly. She was remarkable. Built that company from nothing. Protected it like it was her child. He paused. When she died, I promised myself I would keep protecting it, even from the people running it. He opened the first folder. Marcus was hired 3 years ago, Graham said. Impressive resume, good references. The board was unanimous. He shook his head. We didn't know what we were getting. The documents showed a pattern. Small irregularities at first, expenses that didn't quite add up. Contracts awarded to companies with suspicious connections. Then larger problems. Questionable mergers, risky investments, debt accumulated without board approval. He's been treating the company like his personal piggy bank, Graham said, taking what he wants when he wants it. Why didn't the board stop him? He's charming, persuasive, and most of them don't know what I know. Graham lowered his voice. But there's something else, something bigger. He pulled out a single document, a proposal for the upcoming board meeting. He wants to issue new shares, Graham explained, significantly dilute existing ownership. He's presenting it as expansion capital, but the real purpose is obvious. He's trying to reduce the majority shareholders' control, Eleanor said. Exactly. He's terrified of whoever owns 60%, calls them the silent investor. He's convinced it's some hedge fund or private equity firm planning a hostile takeover. Eleanor almost laughed. Almost. He has no idea it's his wife, she said. Graham's eyes widened. You're the majority shareholder? My grandmother left me 60% in a trust. I've never revealed it. Never wanted to. Graham sat back in his chair. His worried expression transformed into something else entirely. Then you can stop him, he said. You can stop all of this. I know. Eleanor looked out the window at the city street, people walking past with their ordinary problems, their ordinary lives. But I'm not ready yet. I want to see how far he's willing to go. The board meeting is in 2 weeks. Then we have 2 weeks to prepare. Graham nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Everything, every document, every transaction, every secret he's tried to hide. Eleanor turned back to face him. My grandmother built that company. I won't let him destroy it. The days that followed were a blur of preparation and revelation. Each document Graham provided painted a clearer picture of Marcus's corruption. Each piece of evidence made the eventual confrontation more certain. But there were other concerns too. Vivienne Cartwright called Eleanor's cell phone on a Thursday afternoon. Eleanor was sitting in her obstetrician's waiting room, surrounded by other pregnant women and their supportive partners. She was alone. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. Eleanor almost ignored it. Something made her answer. Eleanor, darling, Vivienne's voice dripped with false sweetness. I was hoping we could chat, woman to woman. Eleanor stepped out into the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. What do you want? Straight to business. I respect that. Vivian laughed, a practiced, musical sound. I'm calling to offer you a deal, a generous one considering the circumstances. I'm listening. Walk away quietly. Sign the divorce papers. Don't make a fuss. Vivian paused for effect. In return, I'll make sure Marcus is generous with the settlement. More than generous. You could start over somewhere nice. Raise your baby without any complications. Eleanor watched a couple walk past her in the hallway. The woman was heavily pregnant. The man had his arm around her waist, supporting her. They were laughing about something. Why would you do that? Eleanor asked. Because I like things clean, tidy, no loose ends. Vivian's voice hardened slightly. And because, frankly, darling, you're in my way. In your way of what? Of everything I've worked for. Marcus is going places, important places, and I intend to be right beside him when he gets there. Eleanor thought about the file sitting on her kitchen table. The evidence of Vivian's previous cons, the fake identities, the destroyed men. You think Marcus is your ticket to the top, Eleanor said. I know he is. He's CEO of a billion-dollar company. With the right guidance, the right connections, he could go further, much further. Vivian's tone shifted again, condescending now. But none of that concerns you, does it? You're not built for that world. Small life, small dreams. No offense. Some women aren't built for more. Small life, small dreams. The words hit Eleanor like a slap. She thought about her grandmother, Rose Whitmore, who started with nothing and built an empire, who faced discrimination and dismissal at every turn, who proved everyone wrong and never apologized for her success. Thank you for the offer, Eleanor said, but I'll have to decline. Excuse me? I said no, I'm not signing anything, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not interested in your deals. Silence on the other end, then a sharp intake of breath. You're making a mistake, Vivian said. A very big mistake. Maybe, but it's mine to make. Eleanor hung up the phone. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something else entirely. She walked back into the waiting room just as the nurse called her name. The appointment went smoothly. Baby was healthy, growing well, due in 3 weeks. Dr. Sarah Collins ran through the standard checklist: blood pressure, weight gain, fetal heart rate. Any stress lately? Dr. Collins asked, noting something on her chart. Eleanor almost laughed. Some, yes. Try to take it easy these last few weeks. Rest when you can. Your body's working hard. Rest, easy, simple concepts, impossible to achieve when your world was falling apart. After the appointment, Eleanor drove to her mother's house. Catherine Hayes lived in a modest home in the suburbs, the same house Eleanor had grown up in. The same kitchen where her grandmother had taught her to bake cookies. The same living room where she had done homework and watched movies and dreamed about the future. Sweetheart, Catherine met her at the door with a hug. You look tired. Have you been sleeping? Some. They settled in the kitchen. Catherine made tea without asking. It was what she always did in times of crisis. Tea and conversation. The Hayes family remedy for everything. I talked to Jo, Catherine said. She told me about Marcus, about everything. I'm sorry I didn't call myself. I've been processing. I know. Catherine set a cup in front of Eleanor. Chamomile with honey, exactly right. Your grandmother would be proud of you, you know, keeping your head, thinking strategically. I don't feel strategic. I feel, Eleanor searched for the right word, lost. That's normal. When everything you believe turns out to be false, it takes time to find your footing again. Catherine reached across the table and took Eleanor's hand. But you will. You're a Whitmore woman. We always do. They sat in comfortable silence. The afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen windows. Somewhere outside, a bird was singing. I never told him, Eleanor said finally, about the inheritance, about any of it. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not what I had. I know, sweetheart. Was that stupid? Should I have been more careful? Catherine squeezed her hand. You followed your heart. That's never stupid. The mistake wasn't yours. It was his. The next morning, Eleanor received a package at her apartment. No return address. Inside was a single document and a handwritten note. The note read, "You need to see this, a friend." The document was a prenuptial agreement, drafted 3 years ago, never signed, never shown to Eleanor. According to the agreement, Marcus had planned to protect all assets acquired during the marriage. Eleanor would have been entitled to nothing in the event of divorce, no property, no investments, no claim to any company shares. He had planned this from the beginning, before the wedding, before the vows, before he ever said, "I love you." She had been a placeholder, a prop in his carefully staged life, someone to occupy the wife position until something better came along. Eleanor read the document 3 times. Then she put it away in a folder with the other evidence. The board meeting was in 1 week. 1 week until Marcus learned who really owned his world. But there was one more piece of the puzzle to find first, one more truth to uncover. That afternoon, Eleanor made a phone call she had been dreading. "Margot Ashford," she said when the woman answered. "This is Eleanor Hayes Whitmore. You texted me. You said we needed to talk." "Yes." Margot's voice was careful, measured. "I've been watching Vivian Cartwright operate in our social circles for years. I have information you need. I know she's a con artist. I know her real name. I know about the previous victims. But do you know about the pregnancy?" Eleanor's breath caught. "What about it?" "It's fake, just like all the others. She announces, she pressures, she gets what she wants. Then there's a convenient miscarriage, and everyone feels too sorry for her to ask questions." Margot paused. "I watched her do it twice before. The same pattern, the same timing, the same performance." So it was confirmed. The pregnancy that had destroyed Eleanor's marriage didn't exist. "Why are you telling me this?" Eleanor asked. "Because your grandmother was my mentor. Rose Whitmore gave me my first job, believed in me when no one else did. I owed her everything." Margot's voice softened. "And because I hate watching predators win." Eleanor thanked her and ended the call. She stood at her window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Marcus was planning his next move. Vivian was planning hers. Neither of them knew what was coming. She placed her hand on her belly. 4 weeks, maybe 3. Her daughter would be here soon. "I didn't ask for this fight," Eleanor said quietly, "but I won't run from it either. My grandmother built this company from nothing. I won't let a con artist and my cheating husband destroy it." The baby kicked in response, strong and certain. Eleanor smiled, her first real smile in weeks. Let them come. She was ready. Diana Whitmore arrived unannounced on a Saturday morning. Eleanor was still in her bathrobe when the doorbell rang. "Diana," Eleanor stepped aside to let her mother-in-law enter. "I wasn't expecting you. I thought we should talk." Diana surveyed the small apartment with poorly concealed disdain. Without lawyers present, woman to woman. Those words again, woman to woman. Vivian had used them too, as if being female created some automatic bond, some shared understanding. Diana was impeccably dressed as always. Designer suit, expensive jewelry, hair styled perfectly. She had never approved of Eleanor. The subtle comments over the years had made that clear. The suggestions about Eleanor's clothes, her career, her lack of social ambition. "Would you like some tea?" Eleanor asked. "This won't take long." Diana perched on the edge of the couch like she was afraid of touching the fabric. "I wanted to discuss the divorce, the proper way to handle things." "The proper way." "Eleanor, dear." Diana's tone was patient, condescending. "I know this is difficult for you, but sometimes marriages end. Sometimes people grow apart. It's not anyone's fault." Eleanor sat down across from her. Her belly made everything awkward these days. Even sitting required strategic positioning. "Is that what Marcus told you?" Eleanor asked. "That we grew apart?" "He told me he met someone who understands him better. Someone more compatible with his ambitions." Diana smoothed her skirt. "Vivian is from a good family. Old money. She knows how the world works." "The Cartwright family." "Exactly. Shipping fortune going back generations. Very established." Diana leaned forward slightly. "You were sweet, dear, but sweetness doesn't build empires. Vivian understands ambition. She comes from the right kind of family." "The right kind?" "Old money. Breeding? You wouldn't understand. Eleanor thought about her grandmother, Rose Whitmore, who started working at 14, who saved every penny, who built something from nothing while people like Diana looked down on her. Maybe not, Eleanor said. Tell me more about what I wouldn't understand. Diana took this as encouragement. There's a certain polish that comes with proper upbringing, a way of moving through the world. Vivian has it. She knows which fork to use, which topics to discuss, which people matter. Diana smiled tightly. These things can't be taught, Eleanor. They're inherited. Like money. Exactly like money. The irony was almost too much. Diana Whitmore, lecturing about inherited wealth and proper breeding, had no idea she was sitting in the apartment of someone who could buy and sell her entire family. I appreciate you explaining that, Eleanor said evenly. Is there anything else? Just this, Diana stood, smoothing her skirt again. The divorce should be quick and quiet. No need to drag things through the courts. No need to fight over assets that were never really yours to begin with. Assets like what? The company shares, dear. Marcus's position. The lifestyle you've enjoyed these past few years. Diana moved toward the door. Be reasonable about the settlement. Take what's offered and move on. It's the dignified thing to do. Eleanor walked her to the door. Thank you for your advice, Diana. Of course, we're family, at least for a little while longer. The door closed behind her. Eleanor stood in the silence of her apartment, processing what had just happened. Diana Whitmore had just told her to give up, to accept scraps, to disappear quietly while her son married a con artist. 3 hours later, another Whitmore arrived at her door. Preston Whitmore was the opposite of his wife in every way. Where Diana was polished and artificial, Preston was rough and genuine. Where Diana spoke in careful euphemisms, Preston said exactly what he meant. May I come in? He asked. I promise I'm not here to insult you like my wife probably did. Eleanor let him in. She was curious now. Preston had always been distant during her marriage, polite but uninvolved. She had assumed he shared his wife's disdain. Preston looked around the apartment with an expression Eleanor couldn't quite read. You chose this, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Good furniture, good location, affordable. He nodded slowly. Your grandmother would approve. Eleanor went very still. You knew my grandmother? Rose Whitmore. Preston sat down heavily in an armchair. Met her 30 years ago at a business conference. Sharp as a tack. Took no prisoners. He looked at Eleanor directly. You look like her, you know. Same eyes, same stubborn chin. She never mentioned you. We moved in different circles after that first meeting, but I kept track, read about her in the papers, watched what she built. Preston's voice grew thoughtful. When she died, I wondered what happened to the company. The ownership structure was always mysterious. Eleanor said nothing, waited. My son has made some bad decisions, Preston continued. Worse than bad, stupid, cruel. He takes after his mother's side of the family, unfortunately. He met Eleanor's eyes. I tried to raise him better. I failed. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you're planning something, and I think Marcus is about to learn a very hard lesson. Preston leaned forward. I'm not asking you to spare him. He doesn't deserve it. But whatever happens, be kind to my grandchild, if there is one. There is one, Eleanor said. A girl, due in a few weeks. Preston's face softened. Something shifted in his eyes. A girl, he repeated. A granddaughter. Her name will be Rose Eleanor, after my grandmother, after me. For a long moment, Preston said nothing. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This is information about Marcus's activities at the company, he said. Things even his CFO doesn't know. I've been watching, collecting, waiting. He set the envelope on the coffee table. Use it however you need to. Why would you help me against your own son? Preston stood slowly. He suddenly looked older than his 65 years. Because my son betrayed his pregnant wife for a woman who doesn't exist. Because he's destroying a company that a remarkable woman spent her life building. Because he's become someone I don't recognize and can't defend. Preston moved toward the door. And because your grandmother once told me something I've never forgotten. What was that? She said the true measure of a man isn't what he builds, it's what he protects. My son doesn't protect anything. He only takes. Preston opened the door. Give him hell, Eleanor. He's earned it. The door closed behind him. Eleanor sat alone with the envelope and her thoughts. Preston Whitmore had just handed her ammunition against his own son. The cracks in the Whitmore family were widening. Soon they would become chasms. That evening, Eleanor felt the first sharp pain. It shot through her lower back like lightning. She stopped moving, waited, counted. Another pain, stronger this time. She grabbed her phone and called Joe. Something's wrong, Eleanor said. I'm having pains, bad ones. Joe arrived in 15 minutes. By then, Eleanor was bent over the kitchen counter, breathing through contractions that came every 10 minutes. We're going to the hospital, Joe said. Now, the drive was a blur, pain and fear, and the constant presence of Joe's voice telling her to breathe. Just breathe. Everything would be fine. At the hospital, Dr. Sarah Collins met them in the maternity ward. Blood pressure is elevated, she said after the examination. You're not in labor, but you're close. I'm putting you on bed rest for the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Eleanor lay in the hospital bed, hand on her belly. The board meeting is in 5 days. The board meeting can wait. Your daughter's health comes first. Dr. Collins made notes on her chart. I'm keeping you overnight for observation. Then home. Strict rest. No stress. No stress. Right. Joe stayed with her that night, sat in the uncomfortable visitor's chair while Eleanor stared at the ceiling. The baby is fine, Joe said. Dr. Collins said so. I know. Then what is it? Eleanor turned her head to look at her friend. I was so focused on Marcus, on the company, on revenge, and I forgot what actually matters. Joe moved to sit on the edge of the bed. What matters? Her. Eleanor touched her belly. Just her. Not the money, not the justice, not proving anything to anyone. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I was turning into him, making everything about winning. You're nothing like him. Aren't I? Planning and plotting and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Eleanor shook her head. That's not who I want to be. That's not who my daughter needs me to be. Hospital blankets never smell like home. Eleanor wrapped herself in one anyway. She called no one else that night. Not her mother, not Walter. She just lay there, watching the monitor, counting heartbeats that weren't hers. The baby kicked softly, a reassurance, a reminder. Everything else could wait. This was what mattered. This small life growing inside her, this daughter she would raise differently, teach differently, love without conditions or expectations. The monitor beeped steadily. The night passed slowly. And somewhere in those quiet hours, Eleanor made a decision. She would still attend the board meeting, still reveal the truth, still protect her grandmother's legacy, but not for revenge, for justice, for her daughter, for everything that actually mattered. Eleanor spent the next 3 days on strict bed rest. Joe brought her files to review. Walter brought legal documents to sign. Graham brought company reports to analyze. Her small apartment became a war room, but Eleanor directed operations from her couch. Margot Ashford visited on the second day. She was an elegant woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Rose Whitmore was my first mentor, Margot said, settling into a chair across from Eleanor. I was 19 years old and terrified. She taught me that fear was useful if you channeled it properly. That sounds like her. She also taught me to recognize predators. Margot's expression hardened. I've watched Vivian Cartwright operate for years, moving through society events, targeting wealthy men, playing the long game. You said you have evidence. Margot opened her purse and produced a folder. 3 previous victims, 2 lost fortunes, 1 nearly lost his life. She spread documents across the coffee table. I've kept records, photos, testimonies from people willing to talk. Everything you need to prove what she really is. Eleanor studied the materials. 3 men, all successful, all destroyed by the same woman wearing different names. The first was Gerald Morrison, Margot said, a investment banker. She called herself Vanessa Wells back then, engaged within 6 months, pregnant within 8. Except she wasn't pregnant. Lost his company, his marriage, and nearly his mind before she disappeared. And the others? Similar patterns, different cities, different identities, but always the same approach. Margot pointed to a photograph. This was taken 2 years ago at a charity gala in Boston. She introduced herself as Victoria Ashton, old money from Connecticut. Within a year, she had convinced a hedge fund manager to invest $30 million in a company that didn't exist. Eleanor looked at the photograph. Vivian, Vera, Victoria, Vanessa. How many names had she used? How many lives had she destroyed? Why didn't anyone stop her? Shame. Margot's voice was matter-of-fact. These men were embarrassed. They didn't want anyone to know they'd been fooled. They paid settlements and signed non-disclosure agreements and pretended it never happened. She paused. But I remember. I always remember. That evening, Joe compiled everything into a comprehensive file. Evidence of Vivian's fraud, documentation of Marcus's financial misconduct, proof of the conspiracy to dilute company ownership. It's enough to destroy them both, Joe said. Legally, professionally, personally. Everything they've built would collapse. I know. Is that what you want? Eleanor considered the question carefully. 3 weeks ago, the answer would have been immediate. Yes, burn it all down. Make them suffer like they made her suffer. But lying in that hospital bush or watching the monitor tracked at her daughter's heartbeat, something had shifted. I want the truth to be known, Eleanor said finally. I want my grandmother's company protected. I want Vivian exposed so she can't hurt anyone else. She touched her belly. But I don't want to become someone my daughter would be ashamed of. Joe nodded slowly. So what's the plan? We reveal everything at the board meeting. The ownership, the evidence, all of it. Eleanor met her friend's eyes. But we let the board decide the consequences. We present the facts and step back. Whatever happens after that is justice, not revenge. That's very mature of you. I have to be. I'm about to be a mother. The day before the board meeting, Preston Whitmore called. I've made arrangements, he said. I'll be at the meeting. When you reveal the truth, I'll support you publicly. My wife won't be happy, but she rarely is. Thank you, Preston. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. His voice was heavy with something Eleanor recognized as grief. My son made his choices. Now he has to live with the consequences. But my granddaughter deserves better than what he's become. I won't keep her from knowing her father. I know. Rose wouldn't have approved of that, and neither would you. Preston paused. But you can teach her what he never learned. That character matters more than success. That love isn't something you take, it's something you give. After the call ended, Eleanor sat alone in her apartment as the evening light faded. Tomorrow would change everything. The life she knew would end. A new life would begin. She thought about Marcus, the man she had married, the father of her child. Once she had loved him, really loved him. She had believed in their future, dreamed of growing old together. Those dreams were dead now, but something else was growing in their place. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I know you're planning something. It won't wow. You don't have the power to stop me. No signature, but Eleanor knew who sent it. She typed a reply without hesitation. See you tomorrow. Then she went to bed early. Tomorrow would require all her strength. She needed rest. But sleep came slowly. Her mind kept returning to the same question. What would her grandmother do? Rose Whitmore had faced worse opponents than Marcus and Vivian. She had built her company during a time when women weren't supposed to succeed, when they were dismissed and underestimated at every turn, when men took credit for their ideas and blocked their advancement at every opportunity. Rose had survived, thrived, won, not through revenge, through strength, through patience, through the quiet certainty that she belonged at the table just as much as anyone else. I won't let you down, Grandma, Eleanor whispered into the darkness. I promise. The baby kicked in response, strong and steady, ready. Tomorrow would come, and when it did, Eleanor would be ready too. On the morning of the board meeting, Eleanor dressed carefully. Navy blue dress, professional, powerful. Her grandmother's pearls warm against her collarbone. They had been warm on Rose's skin for 60 years. Joe arrived at 7, Walter at 7:30. Graham had gone ahead to prepare the boardroom. How are you feeling? Joe asked. Nervous? Eleanor smoothed her dress over her belly. But ready. You look ready. You look like your grandmother. The drive downtown took 40 minutes. Traffic was heavy. The city moved around them in its usual chaos of horns and pedestrians and morning commuters. Eleanor watched it all pass by the window. These streets she had walked 1,000 times. This city where she had built her life. Everything familiar. Everything about to change. Last chance to back out, Joe said. No. Eleanor shook her head. This has to happen. They parked in the underground garage of the Whitmore Industries building. 40 stories of glass and steel that her grandmother had built from nothing. Eleanor had avoided this place for years. Too many questions, too many risks. Today, she walked through the front door as what she truly was. The majority owner. Security didn't recognize her. Why would they? She had never visited the executive floors, never attended meetings or events, never drawn attention to herself. I'm here for the board meeting, Eleanor said at the reception desk. Eleanor Hayes Whitmore. The receptionist checked her list, frowned, checked again. I don't see you on the approved list, Mrs. Whitmore. Perhaps there's been a mistake? There's no mistake. Walter stepped forward, presenting credentials. Mrs. Whitmore is expected. Please notify the board that the majority shareholder has arrived. The receptionist's eyes widened. She made a call, spoke in hushed tones, made another call. Someone will be down to escort you immediately, she said. Graham Mitchell appeared from the elevator bank. His expression was carefully neutral, but Eleanor could see the tension in his shoulders. Mrs. Whitmore, he said formally, if you'll follow me. The elevator rose smoothly. Floors ticked by, 20, 30, 35, 40. The board is assembled, Graham said quietly. Marcus has no idea what's coming. Good. Are you sure about this? Once we walk through those doors, there's no going back. Eleanor touched her grandmother's pearls, drew strength from them. I'm sure. The executive floor was everything Eleanor had expected. Marble floors, original artwork, windows overlooking the entire city. Her grandmother had designed this space. Every detail reflected Rose Whitmore's vision. The boardroom doors loomed ahead, massive, imposing. Behind them, 12 people waited, 11 who didn't know her, one who thought he did. Graham paused at the door. Ready? Yes. He pushed the doors open. 12 faces turned, 11 with curiosity, one with shock. Marcus sat at the head of the table in a designer suit, looking every inch the powerful CEO. His coffee cup was raised halfway to his lips. It froze there when he saw Eleanor. Eleanor? His voice cracked slightly. What are you doing here? She didn't answer him. Instead, she walked to the front of the room, her heels clicking against the marble floor. 8 months pregnant, alone, standing where her grandmother once stood, where women weren't supposed to stand. She didn't sit. Let them look up at her. Good morning, she said. My name is Eleanor Hayes Whitmore. Some of you know me as Marcus's wife, soon-to-be ex-wife. She paused. But that's not why I'm here today. Walter stepped forward with documents, handed them to each board member. I'm here as the majority shareholder of Whitmore Industries, Eleanor continued. I hold 60% of this company through the Rose Whitmore Trust, established by my grandmother before her death 5 years ago. The room erupted. Questions, exclamations, demands for explanation. Marcus had gone pale. His coffee cup sat forgotten on the table. This is impossible, he said. The silent investor. For 3 years, it was you? It was always me, Marcus. You just never bothered to look. He stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor. You lied to me, he said. Our entire marriage was a lie. No, Eleanor's voice stayed calm, steady. I loved you. I just never told you about my inheritance. That's not the same thing. She turned to address the board. But speaking of lies, I'd like to discuss Vivian Cartwright, or should I say Vera Kowalski from Newark, New Jersey. Vivian was watching via video call. Eleanor had almost forgotten. Her face had been visible on the conference screen this whole time. Now that face went rigid, then blank. Then the video disconnected. Vivian Cartwright doesn't exist, Eleanor continued. She nodded to Joe, who began distributing the evidence files. The woman my husband left me for is a professional con artist with 3 previous victims. The Cartwright shipping dynasty is a fiction. Her pregnancy is fake. Everything about her is designed to deceive and defraud. The board members paged through the documents, photographs, financial records, testimonies from previous victims. Furthermore, Eleanor said, I have evidence of financial misconduct by Marcus Whitmore during his tenure as CEO. Kickbacks, self-dealing, unauthorized debt, and a proposal designed specifically to dilute majority ownership and consolidate his personal power. She turned back to her husband, ex-husband, whatever he was now. You wanted to know who the silent investor was, she said. You hired detectives, offered bribes, spent 3 years trying to identify the person who controlled your future. She stepped closer to him. It was me, Marcus, the wife you dismissed, the woman you replaced, the mother of your child. Marcus's face cycled through emotions: shock, denial, anger, calculation. This doesn't change anything, he said finally. His voice was strained, desperate. I'm still CEO. I still run this company. Actually, Walter interjected, that brings us to our next agenda item. Given the evidence of financial misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty, I'm calling for an immediate vote of no confidence in Marcus Whitmore as CEO. The vote was unanimous, 11-0. Even the board members who had been Marcus's strongest supporters couldn't ignore the evidence. Security was called. 2 guards appeared at the boardroom doors. Mr. Whitmore, one of them said, please come with us. Marcus looked around the room, searching for allies, finding none. This isn't over, he said to Eleanor. You can't do this to me. I didn't do anything to you, Marcus. You did this to yourself. Eleanor met his eyes. You had everything. A wife who loved you, a daughter on the way, a company that trusted you, and you threw it all away for a woman who doesn't exist. The guards escorted him out. The boardroom doors closed behind him. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Preston Whitmore, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up. I move that we appoint Eleanor Hayes Whitmore as interim chairwoman of the board, he said, pending a full review of company operations and leadership. The motion passed, another unanimous vote. Eleanor stood at the head of the table. Her grandmother's the table, her table now. Thank you, she said. I know this has been a shock. I promise you, I'm not here to disrupt. I'm here to protect what my grandmother built, to ensure this company continues to thrive. She placed her hand on her belly, and to build a legacy worth inheriting. The meeting adjourned. Board members filed out, still processing what had happened. Several stopped to introduce themselves, to express support, to promise cooperation. Jo waited until the room was empty before speaking. You did it, she said. You actually did it. Eleanor looked out the window at the city spread below, miles of buildings and streets and people living their lives. No, she said quietly. This was just the beginning. The aftermath unfolded over the next 48 hours. Vivian disappeared first, fled the country within hours of the board meeting. Her apartment was emptied, her bank accounts closed. By the time investigators arrived, she had vanished completely. Marcus was not so lucky. The evidence of financial misconduct was overwhelming. Company lawyers began building a case. Regulatory agencies were notified. The carefully constructed life Marcus had built was crumbling brick by brick. Eleanor stayed away from the drama. Let the lawyers handle the details. She had more important things to focus on. On the 3rd day after the board meeting, Marcus found her in the parking garage of her apartment building. He was waiting by her car, disheveled, desperate, nothing like the polished executive she had married. Eleanor, he stepped toward her. Please, we need to talk. Jo moved to intervene, but Eleanor raised her hand. It's okay, she said. I'll hear him out. They stood in the concrete dimness of the garage. Cars passed occasionally. The echo of engines and tires, the smell of exhaust and old metal. I made a mistake, Marcus said. His voice was hoarse, raw. A terrible mistake. But we can work together. For the company. For our daughter. Eleanor studied him. This man she had once loved. This man who had broken her heart. This man who had never seen her for who she really was. Our daughter will know her father, she said. I won't keep her from you. That's not who I am. Thank you. Relief flooded his face. In the company? I know things. I can still be useful. We could... No. The word hung between them. Final. Absolute. The company isn't yours anymore, Marcus. It never really was. Eleanor's voice was calm but firm. You were willing to destroy my grandmother's legacy. My legacy. Our daughter's legacy. For a woman you didn't bother to verify. I loved you, Marcus said. In my way. Your way wasn't enough. He flinched like she had struck him. Maybe she had. Sometimes words hit harder than hands. What about us? He asked. Is there any chance? No. Eleanor shook her head. There is no us. There hasn't been for a longest time. Maybe there never was. She moved toward her car. Sign the divorce papers, Marcus. Move on with your life. And when you're ready, when you've done the work, you can have a relationship with your daughter. And Vivian? She's gone. Left the country. The FBI is looking for her, but she's good at disappearing. Eleanor paused at her car door. She used you, Marcus, just like you used me. Turns out you were both playing the same game. Marcus said nothing. What was there to say? Eleanor drove away without looking back. 2 days later, Diana Whitmore made an appearance at Eleanor's apartment. This time, her attitude had shifted dramatically. Eleanor, darling. Diana's voice was sweet now, honeyed. I wanted to apologize for my earlier visit. I didn't understand the situation. If I had known that I was rich, Eleanor interrupted, that I owned the company your son destroyed, that would have changed things for you. Diana's smile faltered. I just meant, I know what you meant. Eleanor stood at her door, not inviting Diana inside. You meant that wealth matters more than character. That status matters more than kindness. That's what you taught Marcus. That's why he became who he is. Now see here. No, you see here. Eleanor's voice stayed steady, strong. Your son betrayed his pregnant wife for a con artist. He stole from the company he was supposed to protect. He lied and manipulated everyone around him. She paused. And you encouraged all of it, every step of the way. Diana's face hardened, the mask of pleasantness falling away. You think you've won, Diana said, but money doesn't make you one of us. You'll never belong in this world. You're right, Eleanor began, closing the door. I don't want to belong in your world. I'm building my own. The door clicked shut. Diana's footsteps retreated down the hallway. Eleanor leaned against the closed door, breathing, processing, letting go. That evening, Preston came to visit. He brought flowers, white roses, her grandmother's favorite. Diana told me about your conversation, and he said, I'm sorry about her. I've been sorry about her for 30 years. You don't need to apologize for her choices. No, but I can apologize for not stopping them. Preston set the flowers on the table. I let her raise our son, let her teach him that success was everything, that people were stepping stones. He looked at Eleanor with eyes full of regret. I was too busy building my career to build a decent human being. It's not too late, Eleanor said. For you or for Marcus? Maybe. Preston didn't sound convinced. But that's not why I'm here. He pulled out an envelope. This is a letter from your grandmother. She gave it to me 15 years ago, asked me to give it to you when the time was right. Eleanor took the envelope. Her name was written on the front in Rose's distinctive handwriting. Why now? Because you've become who she always knew you could be. Preston moved toward the door. Read it when you're ready. It's been waiting a long time. After he left, Eleanor sat alone with the envelope. The baby shifted inside her. Restless. Ready. She wasn't prepared to read it. Not yet. There was too much to process, too many emotions swirling around inside her. Instead, she drove to her grandmother's grave. The September wind carried leaves across the grass. Rose Whitmore's headstone was simple. The words carved into stone read, she built, she loved, she endured. Eleanor sat on the bench beside the grave. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. The wind picked up. The leaves scattered and reformed and scattered again. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out. Once, twice, then silence. I endured too, Grandma, Eleanor whispered finally. I hope you're proud. The wind seemed to answer, a gentle brush against her cheek, like a hand, like a blessing. She sat there until the sun began to set. Then she drove home, drew a bath, soaked in warm water, and thought about everything that had happened. She wasn't the same woman who had received divorce papers at that restaurant 3 weeks ago. That woman had been broken, lost, desperate. This woman was something else entirely. The contractions started that night. Real ones this time. "Joe," Eleanor's voice was calm as she called her friend. "It's time." And Eleanor Hayes Whitmore went into labor knowing exactly who she was. The contractions started at 9:47 in the evening. Eleanor was sitting in her grandmother's rocking chair, reading the novel she had been trying to finish for 3 weeks. The pain came suddenly, sharp, unmistakable, different from the false labor she had experienced before. She set down the book and placed both hands on her belly, waited, counted the seconds. Another contraction, stronger this time. The baby was coming. Eleanor reached for her phone with steady hands. She had prepared for this moment, packed a hospital bag weeks ago, made lists of what to bring, practiced breathing exercises, read every book she could find about childbirth. None of that preparation mattered now. The reality was here. Her daughter was ready to enter the world. "Joe." Eleanor's voice was calm when her friend answered. "It's time. The contractions are 5 minutes apart. I'm on my way." Joe's response was immediate. No hesitation, no questions. "Don't move. Don't do anything. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Eleanor ended the call and sat in the rocking chair. The room around her was quiet, peaceful. The lamp cast warm shadows on the walls. The nursery waited down the hall, ready for its occupant. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the discovery of who she really was. All of it had been building toward tonight. Another contraction rippled through her body. Eleanor breathed through it the way she had been taught. In through the nose, out through the mouth, slow and steady. "It's okay, little one," she whispered to her belly. "We're going to be okay. Both of us." The baby kicked in response. One last kick before the journey began. Joe arrived in 12 minutes. She burst through the door with her car keys in one hand and Eleanor's hospital bag in the other. "How are you feeling?" Joe asked, helping Eleanor to her feet. "Scared." Eleanor admitted it without shame. "Excited, ready." "That's exactly how you should feel." The drive to the hospital took 23 minutes. Joe drove carefully but quickly, navigating through the late-night traffic with practiced precision. The city lights blurred past the windows, red and yellow and white. The colors of a world that kept moving even as Eleanor's life was about to change forever. The contractions came closer together now, 4 minutes apart, then 3.5. Each one a wave of pressure and pain that demanded attention. "Breathe," Joe kept saying. "Just breathe. You're doing great." Eleanor breathed. In, out, in, out. The rhythm of survival, the rhythm of birth. The hospital appeared ahead of them. Bright lights and glass doors and the promise of medical expertise. Joe pulled up to the emergency entrance and helped Eleanor out of the car. A wheelchair appeared immediately, nurses in blue scrubs asking questions. "How far apart are the contractions? Any complications during pregnancy? Is the father joining you?" "No," Eleanor said to the last question. "He won't be here." The nurse nodded without judgment, made a note on her clipboard, wheeled Eleanor toward the elevator. They rose to the maternity floor. The hallways were quiet at this hour, most of the rooms dark, families sleeping, babies dreaming, the miracle of life happening behind closed doors. Eleanor's room was at the end of the hall. Blue walls that reminded her of the nursery she had painted with Marcus before everything fell apart, before she knew the truth. She pushed that thought away. Tonight was not about him. Tonight was about her and her daughter and the future they would build together. Dr. Sarah Collins arrived at 11:30. She was calm and professional, her presence immediately reassuring. "Let's see how we're progressing," she said, examining Eleanor with gentle efficiency. "You're dilated to 6 centimeters, moving along nicely." "How much longer?" "Hard to say. Every birth is different, but I'd estimate 4 to 6 hours. 4 to 6 hours. An eternity. A heartbeat. Both at once, Catherine Hayes arrived at 1 in the morning. She had driven from the suburbs as fast as traffic allowed, breaking several speed limits along the way. "Sweetheart," She rushed to Eleanor's bedside and took her hand. I'm here. I'm right here. Mom. Eleanor gripped her mother's hand as another contraction hit. It hurts. God, it hurts so much. I know, baby, I know. Catherine's voice was thick with emotion. But you can do this. You're the strongest person I've ever known. You're just like your grandmother. The mention of Rose Whitmore brought unexpected comfort. Eleanor imagined her grandmother watching from somewhere. Proud, encouraging, believing in her the way she always had. Tell me about when I was born, Eleanor said between contractions. I need something to focus on. Catherine smiled through her tears. It was a Tuesday, hot as blazes. August in the city. Your father was a nervous wreck. Couldn't sit still. Kept pacing the hallway until the nurses threatened to sedate him. Eleanor laughed despite the pain. Her father had died when she was 12. Cancer, quick and merciless. But the memory of him was warm. Your grandmother was there too, Catherine continued. Wouldn't have missed it for anything. She held my hand just like I'm holding yours now. And when you finally arrived, she was the first one to hold you. Really? She looked at you and said, this one's going to be special. I can tell already. Catherine squeezed Eleanor's hand. She was right. She was always right about the things that mattered. Another contraction, stronger than the others. Eleanor squeezed her mother's hand so hard she worried about causing damage. Sorry, she gasped when it passed. Don't apologize. That's what I'm here for. The hours passed in a blur of pain and pressure and medical instructions. Nurses came and went, monitors beeped and hummed. The world outside the hospital continued its rotation, indifferent to the momentous event taking place within these walls. At 4 in the morning, Eleanor's water broke. The intensity of the contractions increased dramatically. There was no more talking now, no more stories or distractions, only the work of bringing a life into the world. You're at 9 centimeters, Dr. Collins announced. Almost there, you're doing beautifully. Almost there, the words felt both encouraging and impossible. Eleanor had never been more exhausted in her life. Every muscle ached. Every breath was an effort. Joe stood on one side of the bed, Catherine on the other, both of them holding her hands, both of them believing in her. Push when you feel the urge, Dr. Collins instructed. Your body knows what to do. Trust it. Eleanor pushed, with everything she had, every ounce of strength, every fiber of determination. She pushed for her daughter, for her grandmother, for herself. I can see the head, Dr. Collins said. You're doing great. Just a few more pushes. A few more, just a few more. Eleanor gathered what remained of her strength and pushed again. The pain was extraordinary, beyond anything she had imagined, like being torn apart and remade at the same time. And then, a release, a rush, a sound that changed everything. A cry, small at first, then louder, then filling the entire room with the unmistakable announcement of new life. It's a girl, Dr. Collins announced. A healthy baby girl, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. They placed her on Eleanor's chest immediately, still wet, still wailing, still connected by the umbilical cord that had nourished her for 9 months. Eleanor looked at her daughter for the first time, really looked. Tiny nose, perfect ears, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair, eyes that would change color but were currently a deep, mysterious blue. Rose Eleanor, she whispered. Welcome to the world. The baby's cries softened at the sound of her mother's voice, the voice she had been hearing from inside the womb, the voice that meant safety and warmth and love. Her tiny hand curled around Eleanor's finger. Such a small hand, such a fierce grip, already holding on, already fighting, already determined to survive. The first cry, that sound, nothing else in the world matters when you hear it. Eleanor held her daughter still wet, still wailing, and understood something she never had before. Love isn't something you earn, it's something you give, without conditions, without expectations. Catherine was crying openly, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter become a mother. She's beautiful, Catherine said. She looks just like you did, just like Rose did. Joe had stepped back to give them space, but she was crying too, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, pretending she wasn't emotional when she clearly was. Okay, I'm going to be honest, Joe said. I've been in courtrooms with murderers and corporate criminals and ruthless executives. Nothing has ever made me cry, but this, she gestured vaguely at the scene before her. This is different. Eleanor laughed, a tired, joyful, incredulous laugh. Here she was, exhausted and sweaty, and utterly transformed, laughing with her best friend while holding her newborn daughter. It was perfect. Messy and painful and exhausting and absolutely perfect. The nurses took Rose briefly for measurements and tests. Eleanor felt the absence immediately, a physical ache in her chest where her daughter had been. She's fine, the nurse assured her. Just standard procedures. We'll have her back to you in a few minutes. Those few minutes felt like hours. Eleanor watched at every move the nurses made, every touch and measurement and notation. Her protective instincts had activated instantly, completely, irrevocably. When they returned, Rose to her arms, Eleanor felt complete again, whole in a way she hadn't known was possible. She scored perfectly on all her tests, Dr. Collins reported. Strong heart, clear lungs, excellent reflexes. You've got a healthy baby girl. Healthy. The word was a gift, a blessing, a promise of the future. They moved to a recovery room as the sun began to rise, pink light filtering through the windows. A new day, the first day of Rose Eleanor's life. Eleanor tried to sleep but found it impossible. She couldn't stop looking at her daughter, counting her fingers again, memorizing every feature of her face. Rose slept peacefully in the bassinet beside the bed, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath, her small fists curled against the blankets. She's dreaming, Catherine said softly. You can see her eyes moving under her eyelids. What do newborns dream about? Warmth, I think. Safety. The sound of your heartbeat. That's all they've known for 9 months. Eleanor reached into the bassinet and touched Rose's cheek gently, soft as flower petals, warm as sunshine. I promise you, she whispered to her sleeping daughter. I promise I will never let anyone hurt you. I will never let you feel unloved. I will never make you doubt your worth. She thought about Marcus, about the childhood he must have had, the parents who taught him that success mattered more than kindness, that people were stepping stones to be used and discarded. Rose would be raised differently. She would know that she was valued for who she was, not what she achieved. She would learn that love was unconditional, that family meant support, not competition. Eleanor would break the cycle, starting now, starting here, in this hospital room with the morning light streaming through the windows. Joe returned with coffee and bagels from the cafeteria. You need to eat, she insisted. Your body just did something incredible. It needs fuel. Eleanor hadn't realized how hungry she was until she took the first bite. She finished the entire bagel in minutes, then asked for another. That's more like it, Joe said approvingly. Catherine had gone home to shower and change. She would return in a few hours. For now, it was just Eleanor and Joe and the sleeping baby. I have some updates, Joe said carefully, if you want to hear them. Or I can wait. No pressure. Eleanor considered. The outside world felt very far away right now. The drama of Marcus and Vivian and the company seemed to belong to another lifetime. But she needed to know. Tell me, she said, Vivian is still missing. The FBI thinks she's in Europe somewhere. They're working with Interpol, but she's good at disappearing. Joe took a sip of her coffee. Marcus has been cooperative with the investigation. He's providing information about her methods, her contacts. I think he finally realizes how badly he was conned. Has he asked about the baby? Yes, multiple times. He wants to be here. Eleanor looked at Rose, still sleeping peacefully. This tiny person who was half Marcus, who deserved to know her father, regardless of his mistakes. Not yet, Eleanor said finally. I'm not ready, but soon, when I've had time to adjust. Whenever you're ready. He knows he has no right to demand anything. The morning passed slowly. Nurses came to check on Eleanor and Rose. Lactation consultants helped with breastfeeding. Pediatricians examined the baby and declared her perfect. Perfect. Eleanor never got tired of hearing that word. Around noon, a delivery arrived at the room. A massive bouquet of white roses. Eleanor knew who they were from before she read the card. From Preston, she said, Rose's grandfather. The card read, Welcome to the world, Rose Eleanor. You have a legacy of strength behind you and a future of infinite possibility ahead. Your great-great-grandmother would be so proud. With love, Grandpa Preston. Eleanor set the card aside and looked at the flowers. White roses, her grandmother's favorite, a symbol of purity and new beginnings. Another delivery arrived an hour later, a small package this time. Inside was a silver rattle engraved with Rose Eleanor's name and birth date, a gift from Walter Ashford and his wife Margot. They want to meet her, Joe said, reading the accompanying note. When you're ready for visitors. Soon, Eleanor promised. I want Rose to know all the people who helped bring her safely into the world. That evening, Eleanor finally slept. Really slept. Deep and dreamless and restorative. Rose woke her every few hours to eat, but between feedings, Eleanor rested. She dreamed of her grandmother. They were walking through a garden filled with roses, every color imaginable, red and white and yellow and pink. You did well, Rose Whitmore said in the dream. Her voice was exactly as Eleanor remembered it, warm and firm and full of love. I knew you would. I was scared, Eleanor admitted. I didn't know if I could do it alone. You were never alone. Rose smiled and gestured at the garden around them. Look at all these roses, each one planted by someone who loves you. You've built a family, Eleanor, not through blood or marriage, but through choice, through loyalty, through love. Eleanor looked at the garden with new eyes. She saw Joe in the red roses, Catherine in the white, Walter and Margot in the yellow, Graham and Preston in the pink, all of them supporting her, believing in her. And this one, Rose said, pointing to a small rosebud just beginning to open. This one is brand new, the newest member of our garden. The rosebud was perfect, delicate and strong at the same time, ready to bloom. Take care of her, Rose said. Teach her what I taught you. That strength and kindness can coexist. That power and grace are not opposites. That love is the foundation upon which everything else is built. I will, Eleanor promised. I will. She woke to the sound of Rose crying, not a distressed cry, just a hungry one, the simple demand of a newborn for nourishment. Eleanor picked up her daughter and held her close. The dream was fading, but the message remained. She was not alone. She had never been alone. 3 days later, they went home. Not to the penthouse she had shared with Marcus. Not to the small apartment where she had hidden and healed. To a house Eleanor had purchased 6 weeks earlier. A modest place with a garden and a nursery painted robin's egg blue. Joe drove them from the hospital. Catherine waited at the house with groceries stocked and the nursery prepared. Welcome home, Catherine said as Eleanor carried Rose through the front door. Home. The word had new meaning now. It wasn't just a place to live. It was a sanctuary, a foundation, a starting point for everything that would come next. Eleanor walked through the room slowly. The living room with its comfortable furniture, the kitchen with its sunny windows, the nursery with the crib and the changing table, and the rocking chair that had belonged to her grandmother. She sat in the rocking chair and looked around the room. Walls painted the color of robin's eggs. A mobile of stars and moons hanging above the crib, books lined up on shelves waiting to be read aloud. Rose Eleanor was asleep in her arms, exhausted from the journey home, content to be held. I'm going to tell you stories, Eleanor said to her sleeping daughter, about your great-great-grandmother who built an empire, about your grandmother Catherine who raised me with love and patience, about all the women who came before you and paved the way. Rose stirred slightly but didn't wake. And I'm going to tell you about yourself, Eleanor continued, about the night you were born and how you grabbed my finger and wouldn't let go, about how you were surrounded by love from your first breath, about how you were wanted and cherished and celebrated. She rocked slowly back and forth. The chair creaked in familiar rhythm. Most importantly, I'm going to tell you that you can be anything. Do anything. Become anyone you want to be. Eleanor touched her daughter's cheek gently. The world is yours, Rose Eleanor. All you have to do is reach for it. The first week of motherhood was the hardest thing Eleanor had ever done. Harder than the divorce. Harder than the board meeting. Harder than childbirth itself. Rose needed to eat every 2 to 3 hours, day and night. There was no schedule, no predictability, just the constant cycle of feeding and burping and diaper changing and soothing. Eleanor was exhausted in ways she hadn't known were possible. Her body ached from the delivery. Her breasts were sore from breastfeeding. Her emotions swung wildly between overwhelming love and crushing self-doubt. But she wasn't alone. Catherine stayed for the first 2 weeks, cooking meals, doing laundry, holding Rose while Eleanor showered or napped. "You're doing beautifully," Catherine said whenever Eleanor expressed doubt. "First-time mothers always feel this way. It gets easier, I promise." Joe came by every few days with supplies and updates from the outside world. She handled the legal matters, kept the company running smoothly, shielded Eleanor from anything that might add stress. "Your only job right now is being a mom," Joe insisted. "Everything else can wait." By the end of the 3rd week, Eleanor had found a rhythm. Not a perfect one, not a predictable man, but a rhythm nonetheless. Rose was sleeping for longer stretches, 3 hours sometimes. Once, miraculously, 4. Eleanor learned to sleep when the baby slept, to eat with one hand while holding Rose with the other, to find joy in small moments of peace. And there was so much joy. Rose's first smile, which might have been hair but looked real enough to count. The way she turned her head toward Eleanor's voice. The soft sound she made when she was content. The fierce grip of her tiny hands. Rose slept on Eleanor's chest one afternoon while the spring rain fell outside. That weight, that warmth. Eleanor dozed in the rocking chair her grandmother had used. 3 generations of Whitmore women. All survivors, all fighters, all loved. The legacy continued, and it was beautiful. 6 months passed like water through fingers, fast and slow at the same time, filled with moments so precious Eleanor wished she could bottle them and save them forever. Rose Eleanor had transformed from a tiny, helpless newborn into a curious, active baby who was determined to explore every inch of her world. She could roll over now, both directions. She laughed at silly faces and reached for colorful objects and babbled in a language only she understood. Her hair had grown in thick and dark, just like Eleanor's, but her eyes had settled into a shade of blue-gray that reminded Eleanor of her grandmother Rose, the same intelligent, observant eyes that seemed to take in everything. "She's going to be trouble," Joe said one afternoon, watching Rose attempt to grab a fistful of Eleanor's hair. "I can already tell she's got that look." "What look?" "The look your grandmother had, the one that said, 'I know exactly what I want and I'm going to get it.'" Eleanor laughed and gently untangled her hair from Rose's grip. Her daughter protested briefly, then became distracted by a colorful toy nearby. Spring had arrived in full force. The garden behind their house was blooming with flowers Eleanor had planted during her pregnancy. Roses, of course, dozens of varieties in every color, but also tulips and daffodils and lavender and peonies. A riot of color and fragrance that attracted butterflies and bees and admiring comments from neighbors. Eleanor spent as much time as possible in that garden. Rose loved being outside. The fresh air and natural light seemed to energize her. She would lie on a blanket and watch the leaves rustling overhead, completely fascinated by the play of light and shadow. "Your great-great-grandmother loved gardens too," Eleanor told her. "She used to say that watching things grow was the most hopeful thing in the world. Every seed that sprouts is a promise kept." Rose responded by grabbing her own foot and trying to put it in her mouth. She was at that stage now. Everything went in the mouth. The updates from the outside world came through Joe, filtered and curated to minimize stress. The company was thriving under Graham Mitchell's leadership. Stock prices had actually increased since the board meeting. Investors were confident. Employees were happy. The scandal of Marcus's removal had faded from the headlines. "The annual report shows 12% growth," Joe reported during one of her visits. "Graham wants to know if you have any concerns about the expansion plans for the Asian market." "I trust his judgment," Eleanor said, "but send me the details anyway. I'll review them tonight." She had found a balance, staying informed about the company without being consumed by it, making decisions when necessary but delegating daily operations to people she trusted. Being a mother first and a business owner second. It was what her grandmother would have wanted. Rose Whitmore had always said that wealth was a tool, not a destination. The point wasn't to accumulate as much as possible. The point was to use it wisely, to build things that mattered, to leave the world better than you found it. Eleanor intended to honor that philosophy. The Whitmore fortune was in a trust for her daughter now, protected and growing, ready to support whatever dreams Rose Eleanor might have. But that was for the future. Right now, Eleanor's focus was on the present, on the simple joys of motherhood, on watching her daughter grow and change and discover new things every day. Marcus had begun visiting regularly, once a week on Saturday afternoons, always supervised, always on Eleanor's terms. The first visit had been awkward, uncomfortable. Marcus had arrived at the house looking like a man who had aged 10 years and 6 months. His designer suits were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. His confident swagger had been replaced by something quieter, more uncertain. "Thank you for letting me come," he had said at the door. "I know you don't have to do this." "I'm not doing it for you," Eleanor had replied. "I'm doing it for Rose. She deserves to know her father." He had cried when he held his daughter for the first time, not the theatrical tears Eleanor had seen during their marriage. Real tears, messy and uncontrolled and utterly genuine. "She's beautiful," he had whispered. "She looks like you. She looks like herself." Since then, the visits had gradually become easier. Marcus was careful to respect boundaries. He never overstayed, never asked for more than Eleanor was willing to give. He played with Rose on the floor, read her books in his uncertain, unpracticed voice, changed diapers without complaint, though he clearly had no idea what he was doing. "You're getting better at that," Eleanor observed one Saturday, watching him wrestle with a particularly tricky diaper situation. "I've been practicing," Marcus admitted, "on YouTube tutorials, and a baby doll I bought." He looked embarrassed. "I wanted to be useful, to contribute something." It was such a small thing, a father learning to change diapers. But for Marcus, it represented a fundamental shift in how he saw the world. For the first time in his life, he was trying to serve someone else's needs instead of his own. "I've been in therapy," he told Eleanor during one visit, "twice a week, sometimes 3 times. He paused, watching Rose gnaw on a teething ring. "I'm trying to understand why I made the choices I made, why I hurt you the way I did." "And what have you learned?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "That I was taught to see people as resources, as means to an end. That I learned from my mother that the only thing that mattered was climbing higher. That love was a weakness and kindness was a liability." Eleanor said nothing, let him continue. "I hurt you because I was too broken to appreciate what I had. I chose Vivian because she reflected back the person I thought I wanted to be. Ruthless, ambitious, disconnected from anything real." He met Eleanor's eyes. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just trying to become someone who won't make those mistakes again." "For Rose's sake?" "For hers and for mine. And maybe in some small way, for yours." Marcus looked at his daughter, now dozing against Eleanor's shoulder. "I want her to have a father she can be proud of, even if she only sees him once a week, even if he's just a supporting character in her story." Eleanor considered his words. The old Marcus would never have admitted weakness, would never have sought help, would never have put anyone else's needs ahead of his own. This Marcus was different, changed, perhaps genuinely transformed. "Keep doing the work," she said finally. "Keep showing up. Keep trying to be better." She shifted Rose to a more comfortable position. "That's all any of us can do." The updates about Vivian came through Joe as well. 6 weeks after Rose was born, Interpol had tracked her to Monaco. She was arrested at a luxury hotel trying to check in under yet another assumed name. The evidence against her was overwhelming. 3 countries wanted to prosecute her for fraud. Dozens of victims had come forward once they learned she was in custody. The con artist who had destroyed so many lives was finally going to face consequences. She tried to cut a deal, Joe reported, offered to testify against Marcus in exchange for reduced charges. And the prosecutors declined. Marcus is cooperating fully. His testimony is actually more valuable because he's being honest about his own culpability. Joe smiled grimly. "Turns out admitting you were a fool makes you a more credible witness than claiming you were a victim." The trial was scheduled for the fall. Eleanor would have to testify eventually, provide evidence about Vivian's lies and manipulations, confirm the timeline of events. She wasn't looking forward to it, but she wasn't dreading it either. Vivian had lost all power over her. Was just a cautionary tale now. A chapter in Eleanor's story, not the defining theme. Preston Whitmore came every Sunday afternoon without fail. He would sit in the garden and hold Rose and tell stories about the old days. About Rose Whitmore and the company she built. About the early years of struggle and sacrifice and eventual triumph. Your great-great-grandmother was a force of nature, he would tell the baby, who listened with the rapt attention of someone who understood nothing and everything. She walked into boardrooms full of men who wanted her to fail, and she made them respect her anyway. Not by being like them, by being better than them. Rose would grab his finger and babble in response, her version of the conversation. She would have loved you, Preston continued, his voice growing thick with emotion. She loved babies, loved the idea of new beginnings, said every child was a chance for the world to get it right. Diana Whitmore had not visited, had not called, had not acknowledged her granddaughter's existence. The rift between her and Preston had deepened in the months since the board meeting. They still lived in the same house, but barely spoke. She's too proud to admit she was wrong, Preston explained one afternoon. Too invested in the version of reality where Marcus was the victim and you were the villain. Do you think she'll ever come around? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Preston shrugged with the weariness of a man who had spent decades navigating his wife's stubbornness. But I've decided I'm not going to let her choices define mine anymore. This is my granddaughter. I'm going to be part of her life. Diana can accept that or not. He came every Sunday, brought toys and books and his quiet, steady presence. Rose recognized him now, smiled when she saw him, reached for him with her chubby arms. "Grandpa's here," Eleanor would say, and Rose would kick her legs with excitement. It was healing somehow. Watching this man try to be the grandfather he hadn't been capable of being as a father. Watching him prioritize love over pride. Watching him choose connection over convenience. The first weeks of summer brought warm days and longer evenings. Eleanor established a routine. Morning walks with Rose in the stroller. Afternoon playtime in the garden. Evening baths and bedtime stories and the quiet satisfaction of watching her daughter fall asleep. Catherine visited often, sometimes for a day, sometimes for a weekend. She was the most patient grandmother imaginable. Willing to read the same book 20 times. Willing to make the same silly face until Rose laughed herself breathless. Willing to simply sit and hold and be present. "You're doing wonderfully," Catherine had told Eleanor one evening. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Rose was asleep in Eleanor's arms. "I know it doesn't always feel that way, but you are." "I worry constantly," Eleanor admitted, "about everything. Is she eating enough, sleeping enough, developing on schedule? Am I stimulating her brain properly? Am I spending enough quality time?" "That worry is love," Catherine said. "It means you care. It means you're paying attention." She reached over and squeezed Eleanor's hand. "The fact that you're worried about being a good mother means you already are one." The words settled something in Eleanor's chest, some anxious knot that had been tightening for months. "Thank you, Mom." "For what?" "For everything, for being here, for believing in me, for showing me what a good mother looks like." Catherine's eyes glistened. "You're welcome, sweetheart, but you would have figured it out on your own. You're a Whitmore woman. It's in your blood." Joe and Teddy came for dinner one Saturday evening. Teddy made terrible dad jokes that somehow made everyone laugh. Joe provided running commentary on the legal battles she was winning. Rose charmed everyone by demonstrating her new ability to sit up unassisted. "She's going to be CEO by age 2 at this rate," Teddy said, watching Rose determinedly reach for a toy just slightly out of her grasp. "Look at that focus, that determination. She gets it from her great-great-grandmother," Joe said, "and from her mother." They ate on the back porch as the evening light faded. Good food, good wine, good conversation. The simple pleasures of friendship and family. After dinner, Eleanor put Rose to bed while the others cleaned up. The nursery was soft with moonlight. The mobile of stars and moons cast familiar shadows on the walls. Rose grabbed Eleanor's finger as she drifted towards sleep. Such tiny hands, such fierce grip. The same grip that would one day hold pens and books and steering wheels. The same hands that would one day build her own legacy. "You're going to be okay, little one," Eleanor whispered. "We both are. We have everything we need. We have each other. We have the truth. We have a future worth fighting for." Rose's grip loosened as sleep claimed her. Her breathing deepened. Her tiny chest rose and fell with perfect rhythm. Eleanor stood there for a long moment, watching, protecting, loving. She thought about the journey ahead, the challenges, the triumphs, the ordinary days and extraordinary moments, all of it waiting. She thought about Marcus, slowly learning to be a father, about Preston, becoming the grandfather he should have been all along, about Catherine, passing down wisdom and love to another generation, about Joe and Teddy and Walter and Margot and all the people who had become her family through choice and loyalty and love. Most of all, she thought about Rose Whitmore, the grandmother she had lost too soon, the woman who had built an empire and a legacy and a family that would continue long after she was gone. Eleanor finally read the letter one more time. She had read it dozens of times since Rose was born. The words never got old. "Be strong, my darling girl. Be kind. Be unstoppable." She was trying every day, in small ways and large ones, being the mother Rose Eleanor deserved, being the businesswoman who protected her grandmother's legacy, being the person who had survived betrayal and heartbreak and emerged stronger on the other side. She didn't get revenge. She got something better. She got herself back. The woman who existed before Marcus, before the marriage, before the heartbreak. The woman her grandmother had raised her to be. Strong, kind, unstoppable. The summer deepened. The garden flourished. Rose Eleanor grew and changed and discovered new wonders every day. On a warm evening in late July, Eleanor sat alone on the porch after putting Rose to bed. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors. The garden hummed with insects and birdsong. The air smelled of roses and lavender and the particular sweetness of a summer night. She thought about everything that had led her here, the divorce papers that landed next to her anniversary gift, the discovery of who she really was, the board meeting where she claimed her power, the birth of her daughter, the slow, patient work of building a life worth living. A year ago, she had been a woman whose world was falling apart. Tonight, she was a woman whose world was finally coming together. Not the world she had planned, not the life she had imagined. Something different, something better, something authentically hers. Her phone buzzed with a text from an old friend she had reconnected with recently, a woman from college who had also gone through a difficult divorce. They had started meeting for coffee once a month, sharing stories, supporting each other, building the kind of friendship that only grows from shared struggle. "Thinking about you," the text read. "Hope tonight is peaceful." Eleanor smiled and typed a response. "It is, thank you. See you next week." New connections, old ones renewed, a network of support that grew stronger every day. She walked back inside and checked on Rose one more time. Her daughter was sleeping peacefully, one arm flung above her head in complete abandon. The complete trust of the child who has never known anything but love. Eleanor leaned down and kissed her forehead gently. "Sleep well, my love. Tomorrow is a new day." She moved through the house, turning off lights, checking locks, the ordinary rituals of closing out the day. In her bedroom, she paused at the window. The garden was silver in the moonlight. The roses were shadows now, their colors hidden until dawn. But they were still there, still growing, still beautiful, just like her. Eleanor climbed into bed and pulled up the covers. She was tired, the good kind of tired that comes from a day well spent, a life well lived. She closed her eyes and let sleep come. Her dreams were peaceful. No nightmares about Marcus or Vivian. No anxieties about the future. Just gentle images of the garden and the baby and the life she was building one day at a time. In the morning, Rose would wake her with hungry cries. There would be diapers to change and meals to prepare and the endless, wonderful work of raising a child. But for now, there was rest. There was peace. There was the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had survived the worst and emerged stronger on the other side. The future stretched out before her, unknown, uncertain, full of possibility. She wasn't afraid anymore. She knew who she was. She knew what she was capable of. She knew that whatever came next, she could handle it, because she was Eleanor Hayes Whitmore, daughter of Catherine, granddaughter of Rose, mother of Rose Eleanor, owner of an empire, builder of a life, survivor of betrayal, creator of second chances. And that was enough. That was everything. The moon rose high above the garden. The roses swayed gently in the night breeze. The house was quiet. The baby was sleeping. The mother was dreaming. And somewhere Rose Whitmore smiled. 3 generations of Whitmore women, all survivors, all fighters, all loved. The legacy continued, and it was beautiful. Epilogue. 1 year later, Eleanor stood at the podium of the annual Whitmore Industries shareholders meeting. Rose Eleanor, now 18 months old, was with Catherine in the front row, watching her mother with those intelligent blue-gray eyes that missed nothing. "Thank you all for being here," Eleanor said, her voice steady and confident. "3 years ago, I stood in this room for the first time as the majority shareholder of this company. Some of you didn't know what to expect. Some of you doubted whether I was up to the task." She paused, letting the moment settle. "I understand those doubts. I had them myself. I never planned to run a company. I never sought the spotlight or the responsibility that comes with it." She looked at her daughter, who waved enthusiastically from Catherine's lap. "But my grandmother taught me that leadership isn't about wanting power. It's about accepting responsibility. It's about protecting what matters. It's about building something that will last beyond your own lifetime." The room was silent, attentive, waiting. Under Graham Mitchell's excellent leadership, Whitmore Industries has grown 23% over the past 18 months. We've expanded into new markets, created 3,000 new jobs, invested in sustainable practices that will protect our planet for future generations. She smiled, thinking of Rose. But numbers don't tell the whole story. The real success of this company is measured in the people it supports, the families who depend on us, the communities we're part of, the legacy we're building together. Eleanor stepped back from the podium and gestured to the room. "My grandmother started this company with nothing but a dream and an unshakable belief in herself. She proved that a woman could build an empire in a world that didn't expect it. She proved that strength and kindness could coexist. That success didn't require sacrifice of integrity." She paused, her voice growing thick with emotion. "I'm not my grandmother. I'll never be exactly who she was. But I carry her lessons with me every day, and I'm raising a daughter who will carry them forward to another generation." Rose chose that moment to call out, "Mama!" The room erupted in gentle laughter. Eleanor laughed too, wiping her eyes. "That's my cue to wrap up," she said. "But before I go, I want to thank all of you for your trust, your patience, your willingness to believe that this company could thrive under new leadership." She looked around the room, at Graham, who had become a trusted partner, at Preston, who had found redemption in his relationship with his granddaughter, at Joe, who had been beside her through everything. "The future is uncertain," Eleanor concluded. "It always is, but I believe in what we're building together, and I believe that the best is yet to come." Applause filled the room, genuine, warm, supportive. Eleanor stepped down from the podium and made her way to her daughter. Rose reached for her with both arms, and Eleanor scooped her up, holding her close. "Did you hear Mama's speech?" she asked. Rose babbled something that might have been yes or might have been more crackers. It was hard to tell. "You're going to do great things," Eleanor whispered into her daughter's hair. "Even greater things than your great-great-grandmother. Even greater things than me poison." Rose grabbed a fistful of Eleanor's hair in response. Some things never changed. They walked out of the meeting room together. Mother and daughter, past and future, the legacy continuing. Outside, the sun was shining. The city sparkled in the summer light. The world stretched out before them, full of possibility. Eleanor took a deep breath and smiled. This wasn't the life she had planned. It was better. It was hers. It was everything. And it was just the beginning.